Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. I had the privilege this past year of being able to be in the passenger seat as my husband sold his business. And I've also seen other entrepreneurs go through the process of exiting. And it's a fascinating experience because it's filled with a lot of different emotions and a lot of different eye opening experiences. And one of the things that keeps popping up when it comes to exiting is this last minute surprise, kind of like when you're closing on a house. You know, when you're closing on a home, if you've traded real estate before, and like the day before the closing day, they just drop this bomb on you of like, "Oh, and we also need all this other paperwork to finalize the mortgage and make sure we can close." Like, it's always at, 10 frickin' PM the night before the close, right? It's always the night before, at the last minute, and you're like, "Why is this unnecessary stress?" Welcome to exiting your business. It can be a painful process, but it can be a worthwhile one depending on how it turns out for you. So, I wanna go through in this episode how to prepare yourself for a possible exit. Now, one of the fun things about exiting is you never know when you're gonna get bid for your business. You don't know when you're going to be approached asking if you would sell. And I like to behave like, if I got an offer tomorrow, would I be ready? My answer right now is no, but it's because I know I'm inching my way towards that, and I know I'm not in the position yet to do that, but I know that the decisions I'm making daily and the things that I'm focusing on my business are getting me there, getting me closer, inch by inch. Now, the first thing I would do is I would honestly and seriously ask yourself, would you buy your business? If someone came to you and had a doppelganger of your business and asked you to acquire it, would you want to? Would you want to? And then go one step further. And if not, why? Honestly, ask yourself, why wouldn't you want to buy your business? What are the different gaps? Where can you close up some things? What I call the value gaps. And this really represents the constraints in your business that are holding you back from building a truly scalable machine. So if the value gap is that the business is way too reliant on you for certain functions, then you should have a plan in place and a timeline of when you're going to close that gap by either hiring people, documenting processes, delegating, automating, all of those things. And speaking of which, there are a couple of insanely tactical things. I say there are 3 that I would recommend that you do to prepare your business to sell. So these are the 3 tactical things I would really recommend. Number 1 is document your SOPs. I talk about this all the time. I just talked about this on a few episodes actually. And the SOPs are your standard operating procedures. Now, I'm going to give you some tips on when it comes to documenting SOPs to make it less daunting, okay? There are a few key processes. I want you to start at a high level. We're visionaries, us entrepreneurs, so we like to zoom out and think a little bit high level. Start with this. Instead of going through every little granular process, which is what your operators may want to do, start thinking bigger and think about the major machines that are in your business. So think about your onboarding machine, think about your sales and marketing machines, think about your, fulfillment machine, think about your offboarding machine. Think about your employee onboarding and offboarding machines. And next thing you know, you're going to realize that you've basically covered a lot of these processes. But when you think about how does the client onboarding machine work? And then you unpack it and you go, well, they sign up, they get a questionnaire, they get a contract, they get an invoice. Oh, okay, write this all down. And you can do this in any form. I'm personally a verbal processor. That's why I have this podcast. That's why we can do 5 a week because I can just keep talking. But at the end of the day, what happens is I record a lot of my SOPs as voice notes and then have them transcribed and then edited down to processes. Thank you, ChatGPT. But what we love to do is condense the time I'm spending because I don't like writing all this out first glance. I like to build myself a structure using my own kind of verbal dumps, and then I fill it in later. So that might work for you. Maybe you're more visual. You could just want to loom it the whole time and then paste the looms in. Totally fine as well. We have a big mix of those over here because we have people who have different learning styles. So we try to hit every single thing with a written narrative and then some loom examples and some audio if need be. And that's another thing to keep in mind when it comes to documenting SOPs is you want to have all these different styles encompassed, but you also want to be able to show what it is you do in the how you do it so that people eliminate confusion when it comes to the terminology or it comes to remembering all of the different specifics on how you do something. So, the more you have a robust training library, the better off you're going to be when you go to sell your business. Truth be told, there's actually, if we want to get a little bit technical, when it comes to selling your business, depending on what type of sale you're doing, whether it's an asset sale or stock sale, there's actually a component when you're selling your business assets where you're selling what's called goodwill. Now, goodwill is not charity, goodwill is not brand. What goodwill is to a business from a finance standpoint, goodwill is essentially like we say goodwill and we call them section 197 assets, which sounds very technical, but what these really are these are intangibles that are really hard to value. It's like the value of the special air that you have in your office. Let me explain that. It's an intangible value. It's your intellectual properties. It's the value of your client list, the value of your ideas, the value of your approaches, the value of your processes and procedures, the value of your culture, the value of all the things that just make you you, your uniqueness. There is actually an element when you go to sell your business, there's actually typically a value assigned to all of that. And you're going to be able to have an optimized value, not just a higher value, but maybe the more this is worth, you're actually going to get paid more at the end of the day, especially after taxes. You're going to get paid more because you had more of this. Now, that's an overly simplified approach to it, but it's not to be lost that there's value in the intangibles. And that's really important to keep in mind. So you want to document your SOPs. You want to have a method to document these, a concerted effort, get your team involved and make sure that you have this project to update them to document them and to update them every so often. The other thing is build a contingency plan. Now I've talked about this with a few folks that have come on the show. A contingency plan and an exit plan are two different things. An exit plan is how you plan to leave. A contingency plan is what happens when you are forced. That makes sense? So, a contingency plan is like if Shannon I'm not using the hit by a bus thing, that's so overused, but if I became incapacitated, if I was unable I mean, heck, you don't even have to be that hyperbolic. If I was in Costa Rica and my internet went out permanently, like if I lost internet, like let's just say there was no solution to this, Shannon's stranded, traveling, whatever. It's not that crazy far-fetched considering how much I travel down here. So, if I'm in Costa Rica and it's like, what happens when Shannon can't connect to the internet? What happens when Shannon's out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? What happens for extended periods of time? Let's just start with every employee of yours. What is the protocol? What is the plan B when they're out for 2 weeks or more at a time? Who covers for them? What's the coverage plan? What goes on? And does everyone have access to the processes they need in order to fulfill that duty and to not disrupt operations? That is what you want to shoot for. A contingency plan is basically a emergency exit map to say, "Hey, in the case of an emergency, this is what needs to happen." And I think that is a huge, that's like a disaster recovery plan as well, kind of disaster recovery plan, contingency plan, exit plan. You want to have all of these things in place. And you want to be able to say, hey, if disaster strikes, we're going to do this. If someone is incapacitated and can no longer serve the business, we're going to do that. And then here is our plan, our ultimate plan of exiting the business. So, lastly, and again, the self serving finance person, the last thing you want to do is tighten up your financials. The number one reason I see people not getting what their business is worth and not being able to realize that value. The number one reason is because their books are not in order and they expect you. Buyers expect you to have up to date books. And it's actually a huge value enhancer if you have up to date books or know how to get them really easily. And you have to be able to convert them easily to accrual accounting. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but chances are, if you're a small business owner and you're making less than 26 or so million a year in revenue, you are using cash basis. Now, if you are not using cash basis and you're using accrual, that's fine. But because you can elect to use accrual. But chances are, until you have to use accrual or it makes a ton of sense for your business, you're not using it yet. And without explaining the difference between cash and accrual, all you have to know is they're different types of accounting that treat income and expenses differently. So you have to be able to toggle, and you'll see this in QuickBooks. You can toggle between cash and accrual. You want to make sure that you're always running your reports on the right basis of accounting. But when you go to sell your business, you're essentially going to have to measure everything under accrual to better value the business and make sure everything gets captured properly for the value. So you have to fundamentally understand the differences. You have to know, hey, what are my receivables? What are my payables? Because those will show up in accrual when they don't show up in your cash basis. So you have to just keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to your data and availability, of course, having a fractional CFO would help you immensely. But if you don't have that, the next best thing is to just have a really rock solid bookkeeper and maybe even have a fractional CFO or have someone come advise you as you're getting ready to sell your business. And shameless plug, book a power session, book some time with me, and let's dive into seeing where you're at with your business and actually kind of diagnosing where the issues might be or where a buyer may be asking questions. This is actually a really fun exercise. I've done this with clients before where they've brought to me in a power session a set of their financial statements and I pretend to be an investor or I pretend to be a buyer and I go through all the questions. I told you I'm an auditor by trade and by training. So I can just nitpick and say, "Hey, here are all the things that if me as a nitpicky investor, here are all the things that I would ask you just so you're ready. And here are all the things that a buyer is probably going to ask you just so you're ready." And that's a really powerful thing to have because then nothing is really foreign. You're prepared for anything. And chances are, speaking personally, chances are that folks aren't going to ask the questions I ask because they're not CPAs. So if you're ready for me, you're ready for anything. So hopefully, if you are considering selling your business, you have the right support in place. And if not, reach out. Maybe we can help you or maybe we can make a recommendation. But before you sell your business, just make sure you have all of these different pieces in place or you have a plan on which you're going to actually complete them. Because I think that these are kind of like when you're selling your house and it's the bathroom remodel that's like going to be such a big value adder. You can get so much more money if you just spend this little amount of money and you get this done. That's what I'm talking about. These are all those little things that are going to enhance your value for hopefully minimal effort. Everyone says you need to get a bookkeeper, but what good is that if you don't know how to read the financial statements they give you? If you're hesitating to ask questions on your numbers or you're not even looking at them because you don't know how to turn them into actions, we're now offering an accessible option for you to get the support you need to use your financial statements effectively. It's called the CFO On Demand. You can bring your financials to a call with me or message me privately about what's going on with your business. We will even go over what documents you need to send your tax pro so you feel prepared and confident this tax season. Want to learn more? Head to thecfoondemand.com and the link is down in the show notes. Again, that's thecfoondemand.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.